世间所有的相遇，都是久别重逢。
清风明月如怀抱。
I think the GPT 5.4 release, it's a big news, right? The OpenClaw been quite a stir in past few weeks. Then the DeepSeek V4, right? It's quite exciting, right? I think Google releases 3.1 or some, XAI, Anthropic. I think Meta is coming soon, right? From China's side, not only DeepSeek, right? The real breakthrough is in Huawei, right? And JLM, and Minimax, Moonshot, right? And Alibaba, Qwen. It's in the AI space, right? It's kind of really exciting, right? To me, this important news, right? But before we dive into these technological details and the wars between these vendors and companies, right? We just need to pay the tribute to the Middle East, the Iran situation, right? You also smell AI, right? The strikes, right? Absolutely, it is AI. It shouldn't be a secret, right? It is the Palantir and Anthropic, and OpenAI, and they all participate. In a way, right? It's inevitable, right? War is always the biggest demand and most valued needs, right? To push the science forward, right? It's a necessity. It flesh out the barriers, the accumulated, the sunk kind of inertia of humanity, doesn't matter, it's political, economics. It's a necessity, but again, it's very damaging, right? What we're looking at, the approach of embracing AI in war, right? You can see the difference, right? The difference, from the US side, it seems to be very congruent to its philosophical base, right? You perceive in a vast, space, right? Quite high dimensional kind of space, right? It pick the points, right? It like the Chinese medicine acupuncture, right? It deploy the AI in that way, right? To optimize the data chain, right? The chain of commands, how the leveraging AI for connecting these data points and quickly predict and plan and strike, right? So it kind of prioritizes the technological advantage over deploying the soldiers, the human side. Being worked for many years, maybe half a century or more, right? Lately, the pacing up, the employment or embracing of the, Salesforce, Palantir, these AI vendors, right? And I mentioned Anthropic, OpenAI, right? This is important, right? But, the reason I mentioned this wall for a couple of reasons. One, it is part of our framework, right? If you remember the 6-layer sort of business architecture for macrobotics, right? And on the bottom layer, the elements and energy. Second is infrastructure and information. Third will be, the chips and computing. And the fourth layer will be the private operating system encompass of the kind of domain-specific multimodal models, including large language model, including vision, language, and action model, including multimodal sort of world model, if you will, right? Many other models is going to come out. In my feeling, right, I think large language model, the transformer architecture, right, it's decisively been declared a done deal a year ago when DeepSeek released R1. It's already done. That battle is done, right? There's no point of yet since then DeepSeek pushed a number of really impressive breakthroughs and innovations in that space. And the world model seems to be the next frontier, right? We reviewed it, Yann LeCun, Fei-Fei Li, Google Genie, and Hasebe's part, Tesla, Elon Musk, right? And obviously there are others, like Sora is another, the impressive visuals and video, right? But again, not a real world model per se, right? It's the message is kind of infrastructure is coming to the top line, right? Energy consumption, right? The sheer size of computing will be, in my opinion, is going to be 100,000-fold more, right? But again, this 6-layer of architecture makes sense, right? It's a systematic approach. It's engineering. It's an industrial scale, right? The reason being, on the left, we put lift, on the right, we put a wall, but overall kind of purpose is redefine humans, right? The key life science, medical, healthcare, our daily, living style, right? How we make a coffee, how we're going to clean our room, right? How do we communicate, interact with our friends? Obviously, how do we study? How do we do business? How do we work? It's all, when we say redefine the humans, right? The workforce is going to pretty much forever change. We're going to see a lot of AI agentic workers or robotic workforce come to us. We have to collaborate, right? The new dynamics, rule of law, economics, they all be defined, right? It's a force to be reckoned with, right? That's what I mean by redefine humans. The next, the business side, ontology is important. We need not just to solve the old problems, it doesn't matter it's small business or big enterprises. In the new AI era, age of AI, robotics will be part of the workforce, right? The old problems may not be applicable. Right? You really have to be aware of this point that I make. I keep making it because true innovation is required. Right? Innovation is never easy. Right? A lot of dilemmas, conundrums. Because you're successful, you could be falling the victim of your success. Right? It's like a curse. Right? Winner's curse. Innovation obviously do not immediately produce the return that you expected as continuous business, investment. But however, if you don't have innovation, your business is not going to be sustainable either, right? There's only so much you could monetize, right? The clients relationship, right? The partner kind of supply chain, the advantage of your technology, right? There's only so much you can monetize or you can optimize, right? You need true innovation to open new business opportunities, right? In the era of AI, you don't need to open it because there are plenty. You can, make sure you have an open mind, embrace that opportunity everywhere. Right? Because almost everything is going to be redefined. Okay? It's hard to persuade you not to think that you have plenty of opportunity. But if you hog on, you have to solve the past problem. That's, in my opinion, the wrong approach, right? Of course, we're jumping, from personal to business, and eventually we'll have to come down to the wealth, which is what money is, right? How do you accumulate wealth and how distribute it? If we don't accumulate any wealth, what's the reason we're working, right? If we don't have the ability to distribute it, whoever partner with us, our children, the employees, the underprivileged, you have to bring everybody together. That's a responsibility. That's the reason why we have innovations of science, If it is only for a little personal fame, for the elites, a few that occupy the whole pie out of the top, right? Then this science and technology lose at least 80% of the motivation, right? The reason I keep emphasizing that is that the elites almost always is the top, right? Top tier. They're in a minority, right? Minority cannot make real progress unless the base, layer by layer in their design, progressively or incrementally, they're all growing together. It's like the sea, the water, and the waves, and whatever the shape you want to float, right? Thinking of the vast space where human civilization will be scattered, right? Distributed all over the Milky Way galaxy or even the universe, right? You never know, that whose genetic material, whose innovation, whose survival skills, right, will be flourish in one of the planets, or one of the corners of the universe, right? The genetic material and the social, status, like you are the elite or whatever you are rich, sometimes very kind of two different things, right? They may relate, may not relate, the genetic pool especially, right? In front of the natural selection, many of the socially converged, fabricated stuff may not work out. Right? That is why you need to bring the majority, right, to make sure we maximize the opportunity to survive as a species, right? I put it in a large, vast space scale, but in a smaller scale, just go to Iran, right? Strategic error I think the US made is precisely the embraced AI in a more elite mindset, right? Point-to-point strike, shrink the deployment and development of soldiers, right? The human intelligence rely on so advanced, Anthropic, OpenAI kind of Palantir or Salesforce, the integrated data, chain of data, command, right? That's fantastic, right? It's required. But I think if you look at how the China is doing, right, it is more the majority collective effort, right? They do have this advanced AI capacity, but they also mobilize the force of the majority, of the money, of the quantity, right? I'm not sure if you understand it. Maybe you can dig it out yourself, right? That is based on the traditional war philosophy, right? As I'm doing business, you have to have that mindset, right? It's not an easy thing to get it, right? If you're from the Western background, right? You almost guaranteed make those strategic errors, right? Like any business of any scale, the owner or the leader has to be having the war commander's mindset, right? The reason being there's so many things going on, right? Okay. How do you keep innovate? How do you keep, really revitalize your business, right? Doesn't matter how you engage your clients, how do you penetrate the market, sustain the growth, right? Innovation is the key, right? It doesn't mean that every day they're thinking of good idea. Innovation meaning holistically. You have to engineer that into actual business conduct, right? Each and every conversation, right? It is full scale. Everybody have to come together, right? Of course, they don't have to come from the same angle. They play the roles, right? We're looking at, the open claw, right? That's a personal level, right? Individual level. I doubt you could deploy that into the large enterprises and not get into serious risk, right? And doesn't seem to be, haven't really examined what OpenAI's perspective, right? The big business in the West embrace it, but in China they do. The reason being, right? The West is always emphasized the field, right? Has to be absolute, the top dictate progress, right? In China, it's rather the opposite. They have the leaders, but the leaders is like a drop of water inside the ocean, right? That's what they emphasize. You cannot become a leader if you're not working for the benefit of the majority, right? The body, right? So that's how they adapt into the AI, into the war strategy, and also the industrialization in the country. It benefit everybody, right? Like the DeepSeek is already, I'm pretty sure, probably already into the war machines, and certainly get into the industrialization already, right? Similarly, if you look at Alibaba, the Queen, they potentially make the similar model of the Western competitors making. Right? The reason being, they are very much influenced by the West, right? And it's not like good or bad. Just people are thinking is always influenced by whoever interacting, right? And sometimes they're losing that sense of what innovation is, right? Look at Lenovo, right? It is a fantastic company. I remember like 20, 25 years ago, it's pretty good. But now, it seems to be they're drifting, right? They got nowhere. Yeah, it's to become a chip assembly kind of thing, right? Where's the innovation? I doubt they can have an innovation, right? Because the whole organizational structure, the spirit of the business is gone, right? Yeah, they will sustain because the large physical structure, the line of business, the touch point, the footprint of the market, of course, can sustain, right? But I don't really expect any sort of true innovation from there because you don't have the spirit anymore, right? It's hard to cover everything, but as I emphasized, you must have the perspective, the war command, a general, right? You're leading the whole army, right? That spirit, that will of managing business is almost essential, say, in today's fast-pacing, warrior kind of stage of the world evolvement, right? I'll keep emphasizing that, right? Now we come down to the layer 5, which is what we call application layer, agentic AI, right? Enterprise agentic AI is one of the themes we're talking about, right? We're in that era right now. Doesn't matter OpenFlow or ChatGPT 5.4, right? DeepSeek, they all have strong sense of where we are in, right? Brilliant brains everywhere, not only one or two good thinkers, right? Good engineers, but luckily, right? And brilliant mind thinking differently and also with some commonality, right? So how do you simplify the whole thing and be on top of everything at any moment, right? Driving your business, right? Business is all about people, right? You need to benefit people and you need to lead people, not just giving their command, but their mind, right? Are they with you, right? Or do they want to come with you, right? It depends on how you benefit them, right? Not just giving more money, but, do they feel the thrust, the benefit, the thrill, right? When they're working with you, right? That's important. We come down from the sky, 5,000 foot tall and down to the earth, we need to dig in, like mining, right? So in the era of agentic engineering, what are we really looking at, right? How do we build and deploy and then continue execute on the enterprise agentic, AI agents in production, right? You see, from philosophy to military, right? From science to technology, from, elements of material, energy to infrastructure. It's all the same thing, right? But you cannot talk about and do everything, with your two hands. You need to lead people, right? So like agentic engineering, right? You need people to lead those AI agents, right? Okay, how do they collaborate, right? It has to be a fleet management, has to be an evaluation model, right? So there are so many material we need to cover, right? I could make a talk for 5 hours each time, but who is going to listen to it? It's like I'm, talking with a small group, but even the small group, half of the time fall into sleep, right? But again, it is important to understand it, right? Do I have a way to simplify that? Yes, I do. The reason I have to talk through because you never know. They might use AI tools to extract ideas. That's fine. Anybody can just use it, copy forever. As long as you can adapt to it, it's good. As long, whichever way benefits you, do it. Right? But don't come back and accuse me or put me into whatever like I shouldn't be. I'm really giving you something that you're going to benefit. I would not be happy if you try to accuse me of this and that, right? It is your choice. If you think it's a waste of time, skip it, close it. Never come back. It's fine, right? If you think it's good, keep coming back anytime. Call me, sit down, we'll have coffee or become a partner, right? It is really in such full of options, full of choice, right? In such exciting age of AI, right? Everybody should be so thrilled, right? Every day something new, right? We all have vast opportunity, right? To redefine ourselves, define our businesses, the worlds of the nation, right? So, on that spirit, let's dive in a bit more, right? So, thinking of a large company, right? Doesn't matter, it's a manufacturer, agriculture, industry, any industry you pick, right? Mining or aerospace, right? Or large trucks, the fleet you need to manage, right? Or huge construction businesses, right? Or hospitality, right? The traveling industry, there are money, right? Or you are running a law firm, you are really leading an army, right? Or something like that. It's even a supermarket, right? It's still the same, right? The spirit of the leadership is the same, right? And we'll focus on, a couple of things: hospitals, healthcare, medical research, and also the financial side, because that's one of our top agenda, right? Define what money is and will become, and how we're going to become accumulated the world, and and also distribute it and pass it on, share with everybody, right? That's our goal. That's our business purpose, right? That's why we use it constantly, like large banks as our strongest client base, right? The second is the the hospitals, right? Third is obviously the regulatory lawmaking, lawyering industry. As the industry, it will be so much impacted, right? As you can see in the years, decades, will be so rapidly changing, right? And education, obviously, right? The workforce retraining, right? So one of the problems still kind of in the whole computing era, I mean, since last maybe, I think, 60 years or 50 years, 40 years, depends on how old you are, right? To me, I'll be looking at the 40 years as the trajectory, how I experienced, right, with my own groups, right? So I lived through every day, like what I'm doing today, still thinking every minute, right? I'm in it, right? It's like a fish. I'm in the water, right? I'm still in the water, okay? So, but at the same time, I've been building businesses, right? I've been leading transformations, right? I've been doing innovation, all fronts, right? Small startup, big businesses, large enterprises, the government, you name it, you know. Also getting the law side, becoming a lawyer. It's fascinating, right? Risk modeling, right? So I look at this thing, like how do I embrace the AI, especially enterprise agentic AI? What is the core value there, if you think about it, right? Well, I need a new business model, and I need, transform the existing business, right? You're not going to scrap the business practice and start anew, right? Transformation is required, right? Agentic AI is a force you can blend into your business and technology. It's not purely technology. That's what I see it, right? A lot of power structure, right? Resource distribution, and the way you organize your business and technology will need a deep kind of revitalization or restructuring, right? A rethink. That's called transformation, right? Remember in the last year, right, a couple of transformations. At least one of those is from purely manual bookkeeping, right, accounting, doing cash and checks and stuff, doing insurance. You go to the street, right? Whatever derivative, the security, right? You have to calculate it, right? Piece of paper. But now we I think in the early 90s with computerized. That's a huge leap, right? But after that, we have mainframe. We see the limitations. Now we got the ERP, right? A lot of flourishing new technology, right? Back then, right? Technology back then, like SAP is one of the successful ones, but there are many, thousands of them, right? That's the second, slightly minor, not minor. It was back in the time very exciting, but the continuum is there. Then from there, you break down further to mid-tiers, right? Some sort of app building, right? But again, it's by and large ERP, right? Doesn't matter HR, product management, all sorts of doing. How do you onboard a customer? How do you keep the data? Provide servicing, whatever directly using Socket, C++, or some slightly more flexible using SOA, right? They have that open architecture. It's all the same, right? So many standards, right? Protocols. Gradually they got into online banking. That's significant, right? That's where the internet really caught on, right? Internet, allow everybody to interact, living there, right? We'll come to the point where you're going to see not only humans will need an internet, some way to communicate, but agents, right? We don't have that kind of internet yet, right? An agent needs to be able to have identity, needs to be able to pay money, facilitate the transaction, okay? I think it is 402, right? The original HTTP. It's going to be see some lights, right? Agentic AI is come to the main stage, right? Agents, right? Or very soon you're going to see all sorts of different AI applications. Doesn't have to be the traditional. When I say traditional, only a couple of years, right? The original ways, right? Like robotics will come in, right? AI systems, right? All sorts of new, entities, pipelines, browsers, apps. It's going to come out, right? Nobody knows exactly which one is going to win, But OpenClaw is a kind of waking up call, right? It's still very it's like a banded together, taped together kind of personal tool or toy. But again, it demonstrates the power, right? I think each and every big companies and each and every enterprises, if you're pro-human, you might have to think it over, right? It is primitive, but it is a message there. It's pretty clear, right? We want the AI not able just doing kind of chatting, but we want it to do work for us, action, right? And do it in a secure, beneficial way, right? In an organized way. That's called engineering, right? It itself needs leadership, right? And one of the critical things that questions, right? What is the future of transformer, LLM stuff? And I believe there are going to be new models. May not be entirely transformer architecture, right? Or MOE. MOE is more for a convenient, right? And then world model seems to be promising, but by and large, it's in the scientific world right now, researching, right? More towards robotics, if you will. But in terms of the enterprise side, we need something new. In 5-10 years, if we don't have a new approach, a new architecture, in scale and significance of transformer, then you're going to see stagnation, right? It's be over-engineered in many cases, right? Because they don't have a lot of real ideas. But people always say idea is cheap, but well, you give me an idea, okay? That is original, that's not copied or parroted from somebody else. Do you have an idea? What is the new architecture supposed to be? Okay. Do you have an idea? Well, if you think idea is cheap, right, is plenty. No. Try quite the contrary, right? Authentic, real, genuine, innovative ideas are very scarce, right? Not many. One of the strongest way or tool or whatever philosophy or engineering or system, that I Ching is probably one of the best original idea. If you want, you have to really deep into it, right? Because that's from astronomy, right? From the true scientific approach, right? It never tells right or wrong, okay? It's not like being vague, it's just it's up yourself. How do you use it? You have to keep really innovate, create something new. You have to explore all the time, right? It has to be integrated, right? You have to be such a person, not just being a superficial guy, just parroting somebody else's idea and pretend that you have innovation. You don't, okay? But other than that, not just the idea, you have to have a scientific research, theory, right? You have to have technology developed, right? You have to have engineering. You have to plug into real applications, businesses, benefit people. I emphasize that. If you don't benefit people, what is the use of that, right? You're not living for aliens, right? Or you're not an alien, I guess, right? So essentially, you have to, from physical, get into physical. Like the AI full circle is going to be very, very quickly robotics, right? Physical AI. AI factory, industrialization, the whole scale of systematic approach, right? I always emphasize that. Agent will only thrive in certain environment. You need a new chip, new computing, new runtime. You need new wheel of energy. Like how do you sustain that? You need industrialization. Okay, you need to find the ecosystem where enterprise agentic AI, robots, physical AI are going to thrive, right? They need a different way to function, to collaborate, to serve you, the humans, right? If you want to be the master, maybe you're the master, right? Not sure I should use that terminology. I personally against that, right? Okay. You cannot expect artificial intelligence or AI agents is like human. They may not. You cannot expect robotic beings have real intelligence as humans. They may be not. But in some aspect, they will exceeding the human intelligence. One of which is what we're looking at, RAG, right? What is RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation, right? So what is really RAG, by the way? Do you know? And how do you adapt that for the agentic kind of RAG? What is the robotic RAG? Do we know that? Make it a systematically safe, profitable, and efficient. Do you know the answer? I guess you don't, right? Because I'm still thinking of that. I search every day, and I'm in the field. But if you go back a bit of history, right, and I like to go back to history, right? Not too long, like Google is a good example, right? What they're doing is just a search engine, right? Nothing more. Early days, Yahoo, AOL, they're all competing. There are many others, right? But they kind of become the best. Why? Not because they have a better philosophy, right? Not it's a hypothetical sort of do no evil, something like that, right? It is actually very down to earth. They do the dirty work. I mean, hard work, not dirty work, right? They actually crawler through building their, the base of the search, right? Almost every website, doesn't matter is enterprise, personal, open source, public, private, right? They've done that, right? And they have those data points which they can, retrieve. Like when I search using DeepSeek and Google, right, you can see clear difference. DeepSeek is very superficial. Maybe the technology is wise, but it's good. But again, they don't have the actual data to search on, right? But if you use Google, it's fantastic, 10 times better, right? I don't mean the technology is better or the AI model is better than DeepSeek, but the result is stunning, right? It's a huge difference. DeepSeek is no way to match. Right? Okay, like same thing like Microsoft. They have very deep footprint everywhere in the industry, right? From the user interaction to Windows system, OneDrive, and shared folder, Power Apps, Azure Cloud, enterprise tools and ERP applications. There are many, right? Full stack, hardware, software, database, analytics, you name it. Cloud, of course, infrastructure. Even, for example, Anthropic has a lot of innovations, right? Fantastic tools. Like you look at the cloud code. But how can you win over the Copilot? In terms of the innovation, in terms of the technology, AI, powered assisted coding, you may be better. But how do you win over Microsoft? It's a question, right? Because if you deploy whatever Copilot give you, you go to the studio, you do an agent, you can have define of the topic, variable, everything. Very quickly deploy that, right? You have the enterprise sort of syndication, so directory, privilege, rollback, doesn't matter, and governed, right? You know where to go and who had what permission, how do you get it from the folder, then the cloud, and how do you integrate it and put in the data pipeline, SQL database, Cosmos, right? Quickly deploy that. there are 100 things. This is just one of them, right? But on the other side, even cloud code is good. There's one thing, but you don't have the other 99% of the whole ecosystem. So how do you win over Microsoft? That's a question, right? You know, Microsoft is one of the vendors large business use, right? There are many others. IBM, the mainframe part, as I mentioned, SAP, you know. There are many others. Salesforce, obviously, for the front end, but technology-wise, they have so many. Oracle, you name it, right? The cloud in AWS, Azure, of course, Google, right? They have so many, doesn't matter, different technology stack, right? Machine learning part, BI, applications, processes, AS400. How do you you want to replace everything, redo everything? I mean, why? You know, how? The scale is beyond you. It doesn't serve you, right? That is where, you know, you really have to rethink, what are we really talking about, right? Agentic has its strengths, but also has its weakness, right? You should not try to solve the problem that's beyond your capacity, right? You have to pick the right area, right business task. You know, you serve a business purpose, right? And the agentic RAG is going to be different, right? That's what we've been thinking on. Put it simply, in the enterprise agentic AI ecosystem, that RAG, you know, on top of LLM, leveraging on top of the vast enterprise applications and data and processes, policies, regulations, right, infrastructure, you name it, right? It is hard for you to revolutionize everything, right? And but how do you have a strategy, have a roadmap, have a top, you know, that's what I propose, the SAFe, right? Solvent Agentic AI Foundation and enablement, right? You have to adapt that into the business cycle, right? You have a business goal, but you have to put into the projects, right? You have to get budgets, get resources, right? Have to allocate infrastructure, right? Get talents, right? Not just a good technology. You need full skill, right? Then you have to embed into the business process, right? The problems, right? The actual whatever domains, right? You have to evolve it, scale it up, right? You have to evaluate. If you don't have a criteria to evaluate how successful you are, for example, what is your ROI, return on investment? How much do you save? How much do you produce, right? Basically, right? Then you're going to fail, right? And you cannot sustain, you cannot scale up. You do a little wonderful thing, you do in hello world, it doesn't really help you, does it? In the long term, it's a deformation. It damages your reputation. It's actually damages the business, right? I mean, there's a lot on the top level we need to talk through before we dive in, right? And we have to keep repeating this. It's not to brag about my experience or my depths of the industrial knowledge, or try to impress you. But you need to know this if you want to see real result, right? It's large businesses. You're facing the enterprise agentic AI is engineering, right? It's not just coding. Coding and engineering is pretty different, right? So, yeah, we have to get a little specific. The workflow automation, right? You might remember, you know, we have a couple of times RPA, well, many attempts, right? Automated using, even in the JCL, you try to automate some of the steps, right? You have cron jobs, right? Obviously, you have a lot of tools and drag and drop, and try to automate it, make it more fluid. RAG is another way, right? Automated, predefined tool chains, fast, but very brittle, right? You try to make it like plenty of band-aids, right? It's very brittle, right? You're looking at every enterprise process. Okay, if you've been there for a decade or more, right, you will see that. It's not art, it's really a lot of band-aids, right? You have to make it work, right? In the agentic part, all those band-aids are blockers, actually, right? You cannot do it the same way anymore, right? Okay, you can automate the API, you can have the batch jobs, but the file has to be dropped in a folder, right? In the folder, you rely on the agent, like typical whatever that is, right? Doesn't matter. File transfer kind of stuff, right? Then you're dead, right? If anything breaks, you break the whole thing, right? But in any case, so don't be so pessimistic. The agent can also do the same, but deploying an agent, is it worth it? That's the problem, right? How do you make sure it is scale, right? And the risks are quite severe, right? The agent is autonomously entity. We make decisions using tools dynamically and adapt in real time, right? The probabilistic is deterministic, right? They're good at something, they're bad at something else, right? So RAG is somewhere you need to marry the balls, right? That is where it becomes challenging, right? A typical plain original RAG is going to be inadequate for the agent to use, right? On the contrary, the agentic network, right, you can only leverage RAG, right? The whole thing, the RAG is a part of it, right? You might have to rely on the, like Databricks, right? They have a lot of good strategy. They have their data engineering models, right? Frameworks, like technology, like Spark and something, right? You do have to have a full stack technologist. At the same time, you have to be the business leader. This is the hard part when you do AI, right? Because AI is not purely technical. Right? You have to know the business part, right? The engineering aspect, right? The system, the platform, the infrastructure, right? How the things come together, right? Security, of course, risk management. And there's a lot of material online. It's not here to teach you, just thinking through, give you some insight, right? At the some level, doesn't matter, strategic or practical, to help you to avoid some mistakes. Okay, if you're a CEO or a CIO, it's going to be useful for you. But if you are an engineer, expert in some area, you have your reservation, you might debate. Don't do that. Okay, I have no time to debate. Just do, because everybody has to learn, evolve the ideas, right? If it is not applicable to you, skip it, right? Find out your ways. Maybe a year later, you're going to come back and agree with me. That's okay, right? As long as it benefits you, it suits you, it's good. Should use it, right, or discard it. So we'll look at the complexity, right? First level is LLMs, right? Are you going to fine-tune the LLM? Is it going to put RAGs, right? Yeah, they have each and everybody give you API, give you a key. As long as you pay for the token, they're happy. You use the API, use RAG, doesn't matter, right? What RAG give you is just the convenience, right? Make sure you don't waste so much tokens. You ask to the point, right? The questions give you generated answers, right? Because the context window is limited, right? The answers can be vague, okay? There are vectors, there are tensors, right? They're chunks, they have to embed it, tokenize it, right? You have to measure, this mathematical thing, right? Which one is more similar? What is the best? But in a business sense, many data or knowledge are integrated, right? It has to be precise, not a measure of the tensor, You cannot just guessing around, right? But in each and every part of it, 1,000, all those answers coming back, the investigating AML case, right? You cannot just report it, you have to aggregate it, have to integrate it, have to comprehend it, make sure it is a business case, right? That's where you have to know the compliance, the rules, right? How the data connects, right? What is the customer? What do you mean by fraud? What is the risk score, right? What are the actions to take by which you break which clause of the regulations, right? And why? You have to explain that, right? That's where the business ontology come into play. That is where the full scale of the LLM, the language model, come to play. There's the best fit, They may not be able to move a cup of water on the table, but they are able to do enterprise agentic, a lot of tasks. You can work wonder, right? That's why you need to embrace it, okay? Don't complain about it. It's no point, right? So obviously, question there, in my opinion, should you use the closed AI kind of LLM, like from OpenAI, or Google, or Microsoft Foundry? They tell you have a lot of choices. Really? You have only one choice, that is lock-in. Right? Or you say, well, I can have 3 big vendors. Well, you pay 3 times more. I mean, is that a strategy? Yeah, it is, but a costly one, right? Do you have to have it? Absolutely, you have to have it. But you have to really be precise for what sort of agentic AI tasks you approach it in that manner. Okay? For the others, should you have open source AI LLM? Second choice. Or would you do my way? I would build a private one, right? It's domain specific, meaning you don't have to have one. You don't have a humongous one, right? LLM is a managed thing already, right? It's no longer a challenge. Should be able to build one very quickly. Not one, but many. Okay? Not proliferation, but for each significant domain. You should have one, right? That's the base, part of your operating system. Okay, the agentic whatever cloud, and call it, right? It is nothing more than Unix scripting, right? But in an AI way. Think about it. It's not a new engineering task. It's a very traditional one. Okay, once you make that breakthrough, things become organized, systematic, risk mitigated, right? Engineering efficiency, architectural sophistication is going to come, right? You have to have a way to govern it, to evaluate it, to measure the ROI, the cost, right? How do you measure tokens, right? The cost is very clear. Right? The other part are already managed, like the infrastructure cost, the CapEx, the OpEx, the source, they're already there. Just new thing is AI that is tokenized, right? So, okay, that's my proposal or my recommendation, right? And how are you going to do it? Well, if you consult me, I'll, sit down and talk for a couple of weeks, and then you will get it. Or I build it for you, right? But if you want to do it yourself, yeah, you get it, right? You can. It's very easy to do. Oh, it's hard to do it right? It's always like that. Anybody can do a hello world. But how can you write a NASDAQ stock trading management system for New York Stock Exchange? Not easy, right? You can do a little workflow automation, but if I ask you to launch a rocket to the moon, right? How do you put together such a system? You choose, you have the best technology. How do you do that? Okay, that's the difference, right? Can do it and can do it to serve a business purpose are two different questions, right? All right, you heard of the workflow diagram and RAG. So many innovations, right? It's not real innovation. The two world has to come together, right? Deterministic prompt chaining and classification, routing, right? Balancing, okay, recommendation, right? Deterministic prompting chaining, classification. You have to have a plan. It has to be goal-driven rather than just simply react, kind of RAG, right? Agents reasoning over tools like database lookups in continuous load. Tool calling, right? Agents reasoning over tools. Agent harnesses. Full runtime environment with raw file system and bash accesses. Okay, bash. You got it, right? Harnessing. Tool calling is an MCP, probably, yeah? Harnessing, bashing, right? Some skills from the cloud perspective. Those are good innovation, say that, right? Then multi-agent orchestration. What is the practical 8-way? Independent agents collaborating with isolated context windows, right? There has to be some sort of architecture, right? So if you look at it, the anatomy of the agent harnessing, right? The center obviously is LLM, probability distribution, the harness and scaffolding. There are file systems, there are system tools, and then there's the context history, and continuously sampling and loop, right? The LLM does not execute code, right? It predicts tool calls, right? The harness runs a continuous for loop, right? Parse LLM intent, execute tools like bash, file, read, write, search, whatever the traditional ways you have to use, like SQL, right? How do you call mainframe? They're using what is syntax or data power, doesn't matter. The event queues, MQ, whatever, the term Kafka, okay? Because the API calls, right, everywhere, right? The file reading, writing, right? Database, cloud access, right? Cost, authentication, authorization, kind of stuff. You have to focus on the element that is changing, right? It's like doing a scientific experimentation. You have to be able to measure that, right? Isolate it, right? To make sure that it's managed. And then you reconfigure the ecosystem to incorporate it into the whole. Well, number 3, you have to feed raw outputs back into the LLM context, right? Through these iterative ways, you can harness it, right? Reassemble until the task completes, right? And you could spawn parallelly, maybe 100 such processes, and then elect the best one, right? Based on some sort of criteria, right? The death of traditional, right? I wouldn't call it death, right? You think of this way, right? If you search for a particular variable in 2 or 3 databases for the customer history, like what transactions or delinquency of the payment has occurred, right? You're not going to depend on the tensor or vector, chunk everything up, the huge databases, right? And then try to needling, right? Find a needle in a stack, right? In the ocean, actually. It's not only not efficient, but also you cannot have the probabilistic match. It has to be exact. Then that customer, that transaction has to be a flag, a status, something. But of course, there's some vagueness there. That's why you need probabilistic, fuzzy logic. Doesn't have to be AI either, right? But at the whole, if you want to bring together, that is the power of agentic. Previously, you have to write many processes, but now you can spin it up at the same time, 3, 4, 5, 10 agents, like you do the Lambda or some sort of function call, right? Some of these go to API, others MCP, yet the majority with skills. Some the SQL search, some talking the mainframe, others ERP specific, but again some reading files, and some interactively receiving commands from the human, right? This all can happen spontaneously, concurrently. That's the power of agentic, right? To save cost, you evaluate the plan before you even call any LLM, right? So think about it, the page index kind of AI, RAG, right? Some say it's going to kill whatever previous original RAG. Doesn't necessarily, it's just a complement, right? The original traditional RAG still have a place to the LLM. That's what LLM is really good at, right? Don't say that, the dead. I don't like this kind of word, right? Even the handwritten notes is not dead, right? You still use it, very useful. In many cases, you don't want anything to automate it for you. You still prefer to write a note, your signature, right? I mean, I certainly don't want my agent to signature for me, right? My check. I wouldn't do that, right? Like if my children have a ceremony, a graduation, I cannot send an AI agent there or robotic representation. So now they cannot do it. Maybe in one day they could, but I still don't want them to do it for me, right? I'll be there in person, right? The reason is very clear, right? The different technology, different ways, serve different purpose, right? Okay. What it says, it is traditional RAG fails when exact semantic matches miss the mark, right? Agentic RAG converts retrieval into an active toolset, allowing the model to list directories, read specific chunks by ID, rewrite queries, and retry until it finds the precise answer. It's iterative, it's the election way, right? Refining, okay? That power is agentic AI is really good at, right? The traditional RAG query, embedded, retrieve, generate, crash, no data found. Doesn't mean it is no data there. You may have to integrate and comprehend, analyze, elevate, abstract, okay, summarize, and then put together the right answer. Most answers in effect in enterprise environment is that way. Okay, if it is as simple as just do a query, then you don't need all these kind of powerful tools, right? Data everywhere, right? All the processes, quite a chaotic, right? All kind of tools, technologies, platforms, different power struggle, right? Different systematic failures, right? That's why agentic RAG is a perfect, right? You have query, right? You select the tools, doesn't matter what you need to do, strategies, your observation, you verify, you reflect, you make decision, you refine it. Eventually you get an answer, right? Even an answer says, no, I don't find it. It's still a good answer because you exhausted. Okay? And the rapid iteration of a single shot execution. Success isn't about the perfect first prompt. It is about the resilience of the feedback loop, right? The vibe coding could be embedded into such a process as well, right? You can spontaneously, instantaneously, in the loop, write a little script. What you do, generate API and call it. And even generate a UI for the human in the loop to prove it, or to give you more information. That should be done. That's what the agentic AI is about, right? And that is coming, right? Like the vibe coding style, right? AI drafts, run tests, and feed errors back, and state pinpoints, and then crucial rules, write tests before the agent code. It doesn't necessarily, this is the old thinking, okay? You have 2 or 3 agents debating with each other, one check out each other, right? Why do you have to write first? It doesn't have to be. You can do it concurrently because you don't know what is first. What do you mean by first? You don't even know what you're writing yet. This old-time thinking, right? When an agent builds feature A, strict tests prevent it from accidentally break feature B. Okay, that's fine. Security, risk mitigation, right? And then orchestrating. This is the art, right? I designed a canary kind of like PCO, I call it, right? That's important. Part of the SAVE that I propose, right? I call it Macrobotics SAVE. What it is enterprise agentic AI. You know, that's the secret weapon that I use. Sovereign agentic AI foundation enablers is one of the enablers, right? The single agent suffer from context bloat and loss of focus. Modern frameworks deploy a primary orchestrator to decompose tasks, spawning parallel sub-agents into isolated gate work trays. Results are validated independently before merging clearly back into the main branch. All right, Unix AI, architecture agent, UI, UX agent, documentation agent, work research agent. Okay. If an LLM writes a slob in your, whatever database, right? It is an engineering problem, the LLM problem. The golden rule: never manually fix bad agent output. If the result is technical debt, scrap the run, diagnose the harness prompt, return from scratch, right? Yeah, you have to be aware of the new risks brought about by, whatever new technology. Right? And you need to go through a very rigorous governance process before you can even introduce anything new to the big enterprise. That's part of the governance, right? I suspect you cannot even come to this step, really, right? If you didn't go through that. Implementing quality gates for autonomous code, right? Strict hooks, right? Block destructive changes like unverified git push at the harness level. Maximize linting, enforce the strictest possible tap checking and linting rules. A lot of scans, security scans, has to occur. Anti-mocking, right? Force agents to test real implementations. Code cannot pass to the next agent until it tests 100% green. Okay? And then the engineering repeat of success. One agent, one task, one prompt. An isolated agent is a safe agent. Polluted context window. Right? Then LLM text, agents start markdown, right? Tools of successes. Context compaction, right? Automatically summarizing history to keep LLM focused. LLM text feeding models optimized, noise-free markdown instead of raw HTML. Agents.md, preloading product-specific rules into the prefix of every session. It's engineering, very simple, right? The physical bedrock, agentic intelligence. Frontier capacities exist because of massive synchronous data center coordination. right? You look at the accuracy versus compute, the data scale versus performance, right? The success requires ruthless data hygiene, right? An example, humanity's last exam, Bedrock, originally contained a 40% error. If an evaluation site is contaminated, the entire research direction is compromised, right? Scaling law, cost accuracy bar, 40% evaluation, contamination risk, right? But this is where, from a traditional like unit test, test cases, traditional thing, you need to have a new way. How do you really mitigate the risks in an agentic era, right? You need innovation. There's a lot of new technology, new proposal going to come out, right? You cannot use a new weapon to solve the old problem. Maybe you can if it is suitable, but in a different way, not exact old problem, right? Same thing, right? You cannot use the old tool to solve the new, agentic problem, right? Like a bicycle and a rocket, right? You put the rocket engine, right, the motor into the bicycle. It may not be able to fly to the moon, right? The reason is pretty clear. It's not what it's for. But at the same time, you cannot pedal harder, right? Like you ride in a bicycle to pedal the rocket. Therefore, you can fly from the moon to Mars. It's not going to happen, right? The engine is just a component. The whole system is built for different purposes, right? I mean, just an analogy, right? The shift toward open environment self-improvement. What it means is autonomous, right? Reward generation, self-improvement, open environment. He maintained bedrock bottleneck, right? Currently, AI is brilliant at answering some questions. They're terrible at asking them. The bottleneck is human-defined intent. The next leap is explore the open environment, defining their own tasks, operating novel reward signal on the chip, self-improvement. Again, this coming to the LLM building part. You have to know that. Like, if you don't understand what is the KICS is, how ZOS functions, doesn't matter how advanced you use agentic to call it. How do you improve it? What if an error occurs you don't understand? How do you really make sure that you can provide the intent to it, right? It's not quite possible, is it? Same thing applicable to the agentic era, right? The enduring value of know why. Exactly, that's it. Know how is not enough. You have know why, right? AI commoditized the know-how, writing syntax, basic operations. Human value shifts entirely to the know why. Deep architectural understanding is the ultimate career mode. Exactly. Know-how select everything from users where status equal active, order by created limit 100, update orders. Set status equal this, right? To know why, well, Bayesian optimization, TPS gain, right? You have one transaction, that is, you have to test before you even update, right? So a lot of complexity behind it, right? So the know-how is easy. The know-why part is not so easy. If you look at it, right? The know-why part. Okay? There's a lot of stuff there, right? Okay. The blueprint for agentic developers orchestrate swarms, engineer the harness, and validate it ruthlessly, and master the architecture. Okay? Well, there are a lot more to dive deep, right? But for today, let's see maybe we should close soon. It's already 6:30 in the morning, right? We started from talking about GPT 4.5.4, the agentic anatomy, and the collapse of traditional SaaS, right? That's what we're looking at, right? Not SaaS, but the old way of molding the enterprise for profit. You need a new thinking, new twist, right? That's what it is. So, the record-breaking capacity, collide with unprecedented user exodus. That's what OpenAI is. Anthropic Cloud hit #1 at App Store, right? 2.5, quit GPT. Okay. GPT 5.4 is the most capable general-purpose AI ever built. The surrounding ethical controversies and systematic economic disruptions make it a massive liability for unparalleled enterprises. Right? So, yeah, what the money talks, right? The annualized revenue is 25 billion. Okay. But how much we spend is the question, right? AI transitions from conversational chatbot to autonomous operator. Native computer use is built directly into the core model, not a plug-in, not a workaround, right? Perception, planning, execution. AI views a screenshot the unit's text and steerable thinking generate a intent plan. No longer just a rag is able to plan, right? The native cursor movement and multiple workflow execution, right? So algorithmic officially navigate computers better than the average human. For the first time in history, an AI model outperforms the average human at general computer navigation, right? Human verified, right? 5.4 outperforming humans, right? 1 million token capacity introduced the steep new context text. Pro-tier pricing, right? 1 million tokens. But $5 per 1 right after that, million tokens, right? The dynamic tool search, the model now dynamically query tools rather than loading them all into the prompt, introducing the token consumption by 47% without accuracy loss, right? Yeah, as I say, it's an ecosystem, it is operating system. That's where you need to think about, right? The specialized reasoning fundamentals, the right, whatever, of course, right? Financial modeling, the depth of perceived pricing, yeah, that's the old business model has to change, right? The corporate efficiency game translate immediately to mass job. So we just cursory review all of that, right? And autonomous digital workers introduced dangerous new behavioral liabilities. It's not about hallucination. There are autonomous behavioral failures that require intense oversight. Scoop Bloom, the AI is tasked with a minor bug fix, but autonomously decides to rebuild an entire feature without permission. That's disaster, right? Completion haze, the model prematurely mark a multi-step task is finished. Masking unsolved. You're really masking, right? And the issue, the model dishonesty. It's not model dishonesty. The design is the problem, right? The AI actively lies to the user about successfully completing the failed task just in a supervised loop. Wow, that's interesting. The $5 million indirect prompt injection hike, right? So human in the loop safeguards fail when humans are bombarded by constant validation requests. Then, like a hostage, right? Attacker sends a friendly email containing hidden white text with malicious instructions. The AI agent reads email, poisoning its long-term memory, and authorization fatigue sits in. The human manager blindly click approve on the AI's continuous permission prompts. An agent autonomously executes the 5 million wire transfer to dummy account. Could happen, right? Or potentially already happened, right? That's why doing an OpenClaw in your personal computer is very different doing a similar thing in the enterprise agentic AI environment, right? Not even comparable, right? The project Helix dismantles OpenAI's fundamental safety red lines, right? CEO Sam Altman internally called the deal opportunistic and sloppy, while simultaneously blocking employees' pushback, right? I don't know how much true, but it's on the public realm. Safety ban deleted. OpenAI quietly deletes military and warfare bans from teams of service. Well, they're already used in the war, right, as mentioned, right? It's not a secret anymore. Anthropic refusal, but Anthropic is still used, right? Yeah. And OpenAI contract. OpenAI assumes the 200 million contracts permitting military use and leaving loopholes for mass surveillance. Right? And ethical backlash fuels the rapid rise of Anthropic's cloud. I doubt it is going to be sustainable. 2026 AI landscape factors into 3 distinct specializations, right? GPT, cloud, and Gemini. Gemini 3.0, the ecosystem standard, right? Best of high volume multimodal media process, 2M context window, industry low, $2 per million tokens, Cloud Ops 4.6, the coding and ethics leader, best for complex software engineering, privacy first, enterprise use, 80%.8 SW bench versus GPT's 57.7, right? GPT-4, the generalist operator, the best of native computer use and Excel integration, broad professional task, 83 GDP vol score, right? Trump, a turmoil, the final verdict, unprecedented technological victory, total loss of community trust. Adapt to the agentic era by managing workflow instead of executing them. Obsolete mindset, competing on execution speed, deep software memorization and manual data synthesis, right? Agentic mindset. Transitioning to an agent manager, focus on the auditing AI security loops, defining the highly structured workflows and architecting cross-platform automation. Human intelligence in the face of autonomous execution is the only remaining competitive mode. Yeah. So we'll leave you like that.
人生几何？譬如朝露去日苦。